Okay, we are now recording and everyone from the lobby has been admitted into the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's David Crofts and I'm the chair for this session of the Northern Beaches Local Planning Panel. We have a number of items for consideration today, one of which is will be considered in a public meeting, and another one that will be discussed in a non-public meeting by panel members only. Before I commence the more formal part of the meeting, for those of you who aren't familiar with the operation of a local planning panel, I'd just like to briefly talk about its function and its background. Essentially, the panel was set up as one of a number of panels across all Sydney councils and also Wollongong Council as a result of a direction from the state government. The idea behind the panels was to provide an increased level of accountability and increased independent oversight of the planning and development assessment process. So the function of the panel itself in relation to matters that are referred to it is to provide an independent and open forum for interested people like yourselves and groups to hear and make submissions about development proposals that are referred to the panel for determination, to consider and determine development application modifications and reviews of applications that are referred to it, and also to make recommendations to council on planning proposals and any other development matter that might be referred to the panel. There are various statutory rules that govern the operation of the panel through a code of conduct and operational procedures, and they're available on the web, principally through the Department of Planning and Environment's website. The process that's used for the development applications is that they are assessed as would normally be the case with the development application, and then a report is made to the local planning panel. And the panel then makes an independent determination of the application. The council officers make a recommendation to the panel, but the panel does not necessarily have to follow that recommendation. It makes its own decision on the matter. One of the things that's important to note is that the panel doesn't set policy and works within the legal framework set by council, the state government, the Planning Act and the courts. So we don't make the rules, we effectively administer those rules. The panel itself consists of 4 members, a chairperson, a committee member and 2 independent expert members. So I am the chairperson for this meeting. My name's David Crofts, and we have Lloyd Graham with us as the community member, and Deborah Laidlaw as an independent expert, and as well Marjorie Ferguson as an independent expert. The community member, in this case Lloyd, are representatives of the local community, do not need to be an expert in a particular field, but they may be by coincidence. The meeting format follows an on-site inspection, which has been undertaken by panel members where they're able, and that's done independently by each of them. The public panel meeting, which we're participating in at the moment, and then there's a closed panel session for the panel to deliberate and determine applications, and then the council makes a public announcement of that determination. Couple of other things. One is the public meeting provides an opportunity to make oral submissions, but it's not an opportunity for a debate between objectors and the applicant. So it's an opportunity for people to put forward to inform the panel in its decision making. The public meeting is video and audio recorded. The recordings are live streamed, and also the recordings are published on council's website for people to have a look at afterward. And once all speakers in relation to the matters on the agenda are finished, we'll close the public meeting and the panel will move into that closed session. A couple of pointers, particularly to those of you who haven't made a presentation before to the panel. You're essentially limited to a 3-minute presentation. Please don't feel that you need to fill those 3 minutes with content if you don't have information that might take that 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, you can get an extension of time, and I'll consider whether or not I believe that extension should be granted. Most people don't need the 3 minutes and everything's fine. My suggestion to people who put in submissions, don't reread your submission. We've all had an opportunity to read the submission. We've read the council reports. We've read the applicant's documentation provided to the council. Really the presentation is an opportunity for you to let us know as panel members what you think are the key points, so to get the message across, basically. The format that we'll follow is I'll ask the objectors and people who put in submissions to make a presentation. That then follows by the applicant making any responses they wish to make and anything else they wish to draw the panel's attention to, and then I'll open up a panel discussion. So that's a quick introduction in panel meeting, and I'll now move on to the formal part of the panel meeting. First, I'd like to acknowledge country as a sign of respect. The Northern Beaches Planning Panel acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands upon which we gather and pays respect to elders past, present and emerging. I should also note that being a virtual meeting, that we're all located probably in different country of which different Aboriginal nations are the custodians, traditional custodians. Apologies and declarations of interest. I haven't received any apologies. Is that your understanding, Heidi?
That is correct. No apologies have been received.
Right. Thank you, Heidi. In terms of declaration, panel members has indicated that they have lodged a declaration of interest in relation to that matter, and that matter is item 4.1 for a panel member will not be participating in the discussion during the public component of this meeting, nor will they be participating in the determination of that matter. So I need to make that clear. I haven't received any other declarations of interest. Is that correct, Heidi?
That is correct. And just to let you know, David, that your internet is dropping in and out, so we are getting some pauses throughout your declaration and speeches. So I'm not sure if you wanted to reiterate which panel member and that the declaration has been declared for an item.
Okay, the panel member concerned is Deborah Laidlaw, and Deborah will not be participating in item 4.1 because she's lodged a declaration of interest, which is I'll call an indirect declaration of interest in that doesn't concern her directly, but relates to some people that she's acquainted with that live in the neighbourhood. And we haven't received any other declarations of interest.
That is correct. No declarations.
Okay, I apologise for my internet dropping in and out. I'll now move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. The panel recommendation is the panel note the minutes of the Northern Beaches Local Planning Panel held on the 5th of July, which were adopted by the chairperson, have been posted on Council's website. That then brings 4.1, which relates to item DA 2023-0020, which is 48 Aroban, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Avenue Manly, for demolition work and change of use to a site at an educational establishment, which is Stella Maris College, and installation of temporary demountable buildings. We have 3 speakers who have indicated they wish to speak, and as well the applicant and a team of their supporting people are also present. The first person I have is Adrian Breakspear. Adrian, are you online?
I am. Can you hear me?
Good. I can see you and I can hear you okay. Thank you.
First challenge out the way.
Adrian, we're in your hands to make a presentation, please.
Okay, I will keep it as brief as possible. Hi, everyone. So I've lived opposite Stella Maris School for 11 years. It's a great community to live in. Love the street. There are benefits to living near a school. The students are always pleasant. Lots of good things to say in that way. Obviously, long periods in the holidays where it's empty, although used for camps. My kids attend there sometimes as well. Unfortunately, of late, we've been let down by the planning process and the lack of transparency from the school. We feel as residents that rejecting, pausing or putting condition on this DA, as it doesn't properly comply at the moment, will give Stella the opportunity to rethink its role as a good neighbour to the community. We've done a lot of work with the technical submissions, especially those done by BF Planning over an extended period of time. The technical analysis of this you will have read. So what I'd like to sort of talk about really is the neighbourhood, where we live. We've got our kids, walk with dogs. We've got a great sort of street party, Christmas and things. In the last 9 years, we've just not had the best experience dealing with the school as a neighbour. So I'd just like to mention a few of those things. We've obviously been through a build relatively recently, 2015. At this point, the school totally detached from discussing issues with residents. The principal literally put down the phone on us and directed all complaints to the project manager. The project manager of Kane Construction, his name was Mike, was rude. He was sexist. He literally told me, lied to my face when I had him on the phone saying, it's 6:45 in the morning, you're breaking your DA with people on site. He said, no, there's not people, as I watched his workmen walking in yelling to each other on the street. We had a digger bucket dropped off in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. We tried to call the rangers on them to report frequent late works and early starts. It was very hard to get anyone up there. We had 7, when they did get fines, they basically said, well, we've got plenty of money to cover that. They haven't complied with the landscaping requirements from 2014 already. We would like basically not to have any more DAs granted until they come back and comply. We're still waiting for council to come back on that. If the DA is passed, it doesn't really change the school as a positive thing. We're going to lose like tree canopies. We're going to lose the sense of the street. At the moment, we've got a very ugly kind of building ahead of us, not in keeping with the heritage of the street. We're only getting at more of that. The school has said that sent letters saying they'd be honest and transparent. They've not returned emails. They've not had carefully worded answers. We've even had letters to our letterbox saying things like, oh, there have been residents abusing the street. We've made a police report. We've looked into that. We're a very tightly knit community. We know that hasn't been the case. James Griffin, the local MP, has investigated. There was no reports filed by police. We're really surprised the principal should take such a tack to discredit residents. We're peacefully protesting the issue. We're not assaulting students or harassing anybody. We've had demolition workers come to look at sites 4850 and look at sites 4 and 6 Iluka for future demolition. They don't own 4 and 6 Iluka, and they've never spoken to the old lady who's 6, who has no intention of selling her house to them. They currently don't comply with a floor space ratio, setbacks and heritage requirements. I don't see why they should be approved another DA when they're not complying with the existing DAs. All that, and as you know, our complaints about the duplicity of how it's the temporary change of use, temporary DA, but once it's educational use, anything can happen. So as residents, we're very concerned on those respects. And with the heritage aspects of the street, on our side of the street, we can't do anything to change it. My neighbour's actually done a really big worked around a lot of the council requirements to keep the facade of the house, whereas opposite, and they are literally directly opposite the modern current nature of the school. I've gone over time, but I think you've got some of the impression of how we feel about it as residents. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dean Murphy, are you online, please?
I'm just admitting him in now. He dropped out previously, so Dean should be in the meeting now, panel chair. Dean Murphy, if you're in the meeting, the chair has called for you to address the panel.
Hello, Dean, are you with us?
Dean looks to have dropped out again at the moment. I haven't seen him come back into the lobby, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you very much, Heidi. What we might do is we'll just move on and hopefully Dean can rejoin us in a moment. The next person I have on my list is Michelle Washington. Michelle, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Michelle, we're in your hands for your presentation, please.
Okay, no problem at all. Hi, I'm Michelle Washington. I live in Fairlight and I'm a member of a local community group called Friends of Manly. I'm also an executive member. Friends of Manly is a very mixed group of over 100 members and a mailing list of over 300. Our members range from an area of Manly to North Manly and up to Balgowlah. We have a small executive team from a range of backgrounds, interests and age groups. And I just want to stress that we have members from a range of age groups, interests and backgrounds. And no doubt some of our members have children that are attending Stella. We obviously have some members who live in the area around Stella as well. What do we champion? Our key focus of the group is good planning processes and ensuring communities have a chance to contribute positively to shaping their neighbourhoods. You know, we really have a focus on aiming to support good growth and support investment and development that contributes to enhances places. We have recently contributed to the draft local character statements and we've made it very clear that we're very supportive of good growth. We flagged the importance of schools across our area as big contributors to what creates local character diversity. They're obviously essential services for our communities, and we support schools and flag them very strongly as contributors to character. We highlighted that mixed use and walkable communities are really, really important and what communities like. But we think that good neighbours talk to their neighbours and share their plans when they're doing extensions. You know, if someone is doing a residential extension, they pop in and they see their neighbours and they give them a chance to talk about the location of windows. Where could we put more landscaping to help screen the development? How can we address your fears of development? And very often these are fears. They may not be actual, they may only be fears, but it's really important to have these conversations, and that's what makes good neighbours. You know, it also enables them to continue to grow and do development if they're good neighbours. In this instance, you know, we're not talking about a rear extension or a second story addition. This is a project and a rezoning and a DA that is potentially opening the door for a school building of 3 stories with minimal setbacks next to a 1-story house. This is not a rear extension or a carport. It's a challenging location for a school, but it's there. The important thing is that we all work together to manage the growth of the school and the community around it in a way that minimises impacts, reduces fear, and where there's a transparent and positive relationship with the community. Good planning, as we all know, is based on good master plans, good engagement with communities and other stakeholders. And I just flagged that it's not just residents in this area. We have a major food outlet, a number of community uses, parks and other uses in this area. Communities don't want to live in fear of what's going to happen next door to them or down the road. You know, this is a place where people want to age in place. They want to raise their children in a happy environment. Student, teachers and parents don't want to walk, cycle and drive past signs on houses calling for a stop to rezoning. This is not a great way to move forward with development and growth. If there is a master...
Michelle, would you like a short extension?
Sorry, I can't hear.
Sorry, would you like a short extension?
Extension would be nice, thank you. Just quickly, if there is a master plan, it needs to be shared with the community. If this application is approved, conditions such as landscaping, access, etc., should be considered in the context of a master plan and a transparent conversation about what's round the corner, not just a small number of demountable buildings and a demolition. There needs to be a very clear and honest response to residents' objections. Some major concerns are around tree canopy, the impact of the temporary uses and demountables on the streetscape, and potential overshadowing. We also wanted to flag that we've got commitment from both the local MP and council to support bringing stakeholders together around starting a process to share plans, issues and identify opportunities to collaborate in the wider precinct. So we asked that there be a halt, just a stop on the moment on this application so that we have a chance to come together as a community and find a positive way forward. And obviously for Stella to be part of this collaborative process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Michelle. The next speaker I have is Felicity Weaver. I can see you're online, Felicity. You need to get your microphone's on. Good. Yeah.
Can you hear me? If Dean is there, could he go now first?
I haven't seen Dean come back into the meeting yet.
Okay. I'm texting him. He's trying to get on. He sent me what he was going to say. Is it okay if I go for longer and I talk both on his behalf and my behalf?
Yes, that's fine. Yes.
Okay. So our issue is that at this moment the DA does not comply. So we're residents, we're not experts, but we have employed experts and we have spent a huge amount of time looking at this. It was only when I had actually spoken with Zieta Briones from the school, once we received the DA, just to ask exactly what they plan to do in the future, because their letter stated that they wanted to have a senior hub and a car park. So it was then that she told me that they were looking for a 3-story building, which would look exactly the same as the one that they had, and it would come off the existing building. So, and it was from that which alerted me to that does not comply with this DA. So, which then I realised after speaking with various town planners and lawyers that this is what is called a piecemeal approach or expansion by stealth. And so the point of this DA is that it's simply one of the pieces in a longer puzzle. So that is of massive concern and consequence to us as neighbours and in an absolutely awesome community that we live in. So this is, I understand that we're here to talk about the technicalities and we're trying to do that and we've employed people to do that. We don't have the means of a school who has been working with, builders, who've been working with planners, who've been working with lawyers for decades to do this. They would have, from the plans, you can see that they had, they did address that they would potentially put a 3-story building in, and you can see that it is attached to it. That building was done in 2014, the DA went in. So that would suggest that there has actually been a master plan since before 2014. So at the moment, it's not complying and it doesn't comply. And so therefore, we think that it should not, this doesn't comply in terms of the demountables do not comply, let alone what is the next step that we all know. We can stop pretending that it's nothing but a piecemeal approach, because that's what it is. It's expansion by stealth. But we're dealing right now with this single demountables, which do not comply. They go over the floor space ratio, and there are alternatives. So those alternatives include going to the Benedict campus, which is down the road. The school has said that that is unsafe. However, when they turned that campus into an education facilities, they had a report done by a traffic engineer which stated it was safe. So I'm unsure of why it is now no longer safe, and also if it's no longer safe, why are students continuing to go to and from? So there's an entire report done which should have been submitted, which talks about the safety of it. They talk about that the teachers would lose some parking. With that, that is not of concern. Remember, this is temporary. As Stella keeps on telling us, it's temporary. So therefore, we should ignore all of the reasons of why it doesn't comply, because it's just temporary. Well, the residents don't really mind. For a start, our streets are a 2-hour zone, so those teachers would need to park somewhere else. So there are spots available. They already have about 70 cars on the street. That is not obviously a concern. That is a better outcome for us, and that is a very viable thing for the school to do, is to use their other campus and put the demountables there. Another option is that the school complies on that site. So if they comply on that site, that might mean that they have to have less rooms. That might mean that they have to be 2 stories. But so that they're having the setbacks and that they comply, whatever it needs to be, but as long as they comply. Because right now you've got a neighbour behind who is in her 80s, and she's the one that had the school come, the school send demolition people to look at demolishing her house, which she has never spoken to the school before about. She spends time in her backyard every single day sitting in the sun. So let's not make it worse for her, and let's just have something that complies. I'd also like to say that the school says that I understand that the school has the right with an adjoining property in an R1 zone to put a school there. But that right is if it complies, of which it currently does not comply. Their town plan has said that you need to enable other land uses to provide facilities or services to meet the day-to-day needs of residents. It does not meet the day-to-day needs of residents. This is demountables for Stella Maris students. That is a very small portion of people, because you need to be female, you need to be a high school age, you need to have a certain amount of money to afford the fees. And they talk about, on one hand, they talk about 70% of their students live within a 5-kilometre radius. Yet when you look at their latest annual report of 2021, they talked about the majority of our students live within a 15-kilometre radius. Now, 15-kilometre radius, if it is that, yes.
Excuse me for a moment. You're now just a bit over 5 minutes. Let's start winding up, please. You're a bit over 5 minutes. Could you start?
I can't really hear you.
Sorry. You're a bit over 5 minutes, so could you start winding up, please?
Sure. 15 kilometres looks at being Duffy's Forest, Coogee. If it's 5 kilometres, we're talking about there's 8 different schools that are in the catchment within 5 kilometres, all of which those Stella students could also attend. But the student population is not growing, as we've been told. There is, let me see. Yeah, so our disappointment is that we know that a master plan exists. We know that they have the intentions to build. They've told me over the phone via Zeta, and then they refused to answer emails when that had happened. They refused to confirm that. It was only when emailing politicians, our state, federal and councillors, that we actually got replies. So there has been this whole thing of we want to be transparent, but we have not seen transparency. We have not seen honesty. We've seen carefully worded emails which do not answer the question, because if they were to answer the question, it would be a lie. So the question is avoided. And what the consequence on our neighbourhood is that number 6 Aluka Avenue has sold their house because of this. Number 46.
Sorry, soliciting. In our time for 2 people, you've had over 2 people's worth of time,
okay,
so you'll need to
I'll wrap it
close up,
yeah.
please.
Yeah. So number 46 is also in negotiations with Stella, of which they refused to acknowledge that that was happening. And you have got every neighbour. When one house goes, the next one goes, the next one goes. Nobody wants to be near a 12-metre high building that's 5 metres off their property. So your decision is about whether it complies or not, but it's also about how we are going to be significantly affected in the future. And this is the opportunity for Stella to actually do the right thing and put in a new DA and have the opportunity to be a good neighbour. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sadie. I think that's the only speakers that I've got for the objectors, assuming that Pussy's also speaking for Dean. Is that correct, Heidi?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. So I'll now move on to the applicant. I think Kima Doyle. Kima, you're acting as the ring master, so as to speak, for the applicant and the and your support people. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you, David. Are you right?
Okay, we're in your hands for any.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for your time this morning. We appreciate it. I'll just briefly let you know what our team comprises of. So if you have any questions regarding any specific matters, you know who we have available. So we've got Elizabeth Carnegie, the principal from Stella Maris College here. We also have Zeta Briones, the business director from Stella Maris, Thomas Hart, the lead architect. We have Amanda Bowles, our landscape architect on hand, John Altram, our heritage architect, and then we have our project management team as well here. So we've got Tom Booth, Sam Wolf-Gillings, Emily Campbell and Jimmy Lau. So if there are any specific questions that the panels have, obviously they can answer those. But just to turn our attention to the concerns that have been raised by the speakers this morning, I'll touch on sort of permissibility, master planning, possible alternate locations and trees. And then I know there was also some concerns raised regarding construction management and also potential issues with previous development. Okay, so I think that sort of captures the concerns that were raised today. So first off, I just want to highlight that an educational use is a permissible use in the zone. The school legally, acquired these sites some time ago. 8 years ago, they acquired these sites, and they were acquired for a very direct, very immediate need for the college. And now I'm just going to touch on this master planning that seems to have come up a few times in that there hasn't been master planning. The master planning for the school actually started back in 2012. The school carried out a comprehensive review of the site, identified the opportunities, the constraints, the existing issues with the school facilities on the main college campus, and they identified a number of issues that they wanted to address. Now, as part of that, they then undertook multiple community consultation sessions. There were briefings at the hall. A DA was submitted in 2014, which was approved by the regional panel at the time. And that DA in 2014 increased the population on the main college campus by 200. It fell into two parts. There was the construction of the Scholastica building, part 1, which has been completed on site, which you would have seen if you went down. And that's the large building that sits directly adjacent this subject site at 4850. And then there was part 2, and that is the demolition of the Creative Arts building and the replacement of that building. So the Scholastica building has been complete, and that also included the additional 30 car spaces as well to support the increase in population. So those works were undertaken 2015, 2016. Now I know that there were concerns raised by the earlier speaker regarding management, the team that was used. All of those concerns have been heard. It is a different team that has been engaged for this component of work, and obviously the principal and the business director here, and they can talk to making sure those issues don't arise again going forward. But we're now at stage 2, where the school needs to build the Creative Arts building. So they need to knock down that large building at the sort of southeastern end of the site and rebuild that. Now, to do that, they need to decant those students somewhere. And after an extensive analysis of looking at all the opportunities as to where they can decamp those 8 GLAs that they need so the school can function while that creative arts building is rebuilt, the final decision was that the school needed to acquire these new sites to be able to decamp the students to the sites. And this is obviously the DA before you. And that is because the main college campus is extremely constrained. You would have seen the site. It is a very small site, and it is currently providing school placements for 1,150 schoolgirls. It contains 2 heritage items. It's got the convent of the Good Samaritan and also the 2 Moreton Bay figs within the centre of the site. And there is no space on the main college campus to accommodate demountables at present, especially when you consider that the creative arts building is going to be demolished. You need to also consider that Stella Maris College doesn't have a school hall or assembly. The site is too small, and so all gatherings of the school occur outside in that basketball court, open space area. So the suggestion that the demountables could possibly go there is not functional, and is not a possibility, especially given the proximity to where the works are going to occur on the creative arts building. So then the other option was considered, and that was the Benedict campus, because obviously the school comprises 2 sites. You've got the main college campus and then the satellite campus, the Benedict campus.
Can I just you're up to 5 minutes?
Oh, okay.
Thank you. So if you can just, I could try and close off on those points.
Okay, sorry. Normally I was under the impression that applicants got more time to address objectors' concerns, but if you wrap up,
you do. I'm just telling you, you're up to 5 minutes, so just so you can manage your time better. Thank you.
No, that's fine. I understood. The Benedict campus is not a viable option. The Benedict campus operates as a satellite school, and it is the senior hub. It is where the senior students undertake their studies. And the classes that need to be decamped from the main college campus are junior classrooms. So this is kids year 7, 8, 9 and 10. And it is not safe or practical for those junior students to be located on a satellite school that is some however many 100 metres, because functionally, practically, and from a safety reason, you cannot have year 7s traipsing up and down the street unaccompanied. And also, given the way the classes are run, they move between classes frequently as they switch between the subjects. So it is just not a viable option, practical option, or a safe option for the college to place the demountables on the Benedict campus, and that is why it was ruled out. Of course, the college would do this. It is a far cheaper, option. It is a far easier option, and if this was a viable option, the school would, of course, undertaken it. It is with the great expense and time that the college has undertaken, this DA, simply to provide the short-term immediate need that they have to decamp the kids from the main campus to this site while they undertake works. I know that there was talk about tree canopy. This DA doesn't actually include the removal of any trees. There are a number of trees on the site. These are exempt species and they can be removed from the site without approval. But Council has recommended a number of conditions addressing landscaping and the provision of additional trees. We put forward some recommendations regarding some minor amendments to the conditions, and that is that Council recommended that 2 additional trees be planted on the site. We would like for those trees to be planted on the main college campus if possible, because we don't think it's practical to plant those trees on the demountable site while the demountable is in place, because obviously if the demountables are installed and then those trees are planted, it would be then very difficult to then crane the demountable off the site at completion if those 2 significant trees are on the site. So we would just request that those trees can be planted on the main campus site so they can obviously, ensure their success, and then they're there for a long time. Have I captured everything? I think I have. If there's anything else that the panel specifically wants to know or answer, obviously we're available to address the panel.
Okay, thank you very much, Kim, and I apologise if there's a delay or I'm breaking up. Heidi, if I'm breaking up too much, let me know and I'll turn the camera off while I'm speaking to reduce the amount of data going out to the internet. That might make the speech a little bit less problematic.
Okay, I might request
so
that
I'd
you
now
could-
like to...
David, if you could just turn your camera off, there was some interference. There we go. Thank you.
Okay. Is that much better?
Yes.
1, 2, 3. Yeah, I thought that might be the case. Okay, that's good. I can still, by the way, I could hear everyone without a problem, and I can see you. There's no breakup. It appears to be the feed coming from myself that's the problem, but since I've turned the camera off, hopefully that issue's disappeared. So I'd now like to say to the panel. So Marjorie Ferguson and Lloyd Graham are online. Marjorie, have you got any questions or queries at this point you wish to ask, either the applicant or the objectors?
I just have one at the moment in relation to trees, and I think Kaima, the 2 trees that should this be approved to be placed where the demountables are going. I mean, what about if they were, say, planted in the front setback at least? Because if this were to be approved, there is a condition with a 5-metre setback in place for future. If there was any future development there, would it be possible to put trees in the front setback?
Yeah, there's no issue with putting the trees in the front setback. The issue arises is when the school wants to remove the demountables at the end of the 2-year period. Obviously, these are prefabricated large structures that will get trucked in and then sort of craned or lifted onto the site. And if the demountables go in and then the trees, and they're significant trees, they're going to be mature trees, they're then planted in the front. To then remove the demountables from the site is going to be problematic, and I just would be good to avoid the situation of putting the trees in and then potentially having to remove them to get the demountables out. So there's no issue, with providing additional planting. Obviously, the school supports that. It's just how can we come up with a solution that I guess works.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why the suggestion was to put them on the main college campus site, because then the school can nominate a site and know that they go in and then ensure their success. But I understand your concerns about canopy cover and general landscaping. But that's our sort of practical solution to the problem, because I don't know how else to work around it.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, David. That's fine. Fine for a minute.
Okay, thank you, Marjorie. Lloyd, do you have any questions or queries?
Yes, thank you, David. I've got a couple of questions. Obviously, a suggestion has been made that the existing residents be retained and perhaps reconfigured internally to accommodate the students. I'm just wondering whether that option has been fully explored, and if so, and dismissed, what the reasoning was to dismiss that as the option.
That was explored. Obviously, it's a cheaper and quicker and sort of faster process for the school. The school has an immediate need to provide 8 GLAs. So 8 large format flexible classrooms to decamp the junior students to enable the school to function while it undertakes these works. So the current configuration of the two dwellings, you've got a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, and then the other property is a duplex, split level of two bedrooms. And those existing dwellings do not sort of in any way provide the flexible large format space for a teacher to stand in front of 30 students and deliver a maths class, a Japanese class. The floor layouts of the two dwellings are just not in any way suitable. And then you've also got to consider things like access, fire egress, safety of the students with sight lines, and the dwellings are not built for what the school needs. And I understand the concern in the community in terms of the loss of housing, but I just want to point out that under the exempt and complying development codes, you can demolish single dwelling houses without development consent. The school has included the demolition of the dwellings in this DA for transparency, to let the community know what their their overall sort of vision of the site. So the school could, if they wished, could have knocked down those houses some time ago, and they didn't. They kept them, they rented them out to the community, and we've submitted a DA that encompasses the whole project scope. And it really is to fulfill, a very important, very critical function, for the school. And I know that I'll just quickly touch on this. I know that the objectors, raised concern that this isn't servicing the day-to-day needs of the local community. Stella Maris is providing 1,150 student placements for kids in the community. This is a critical piece of community infrastructure, and it is also vital that they are embedded in community, so people have access to these facilities in community. And I know, concerns were raised about, proximity and whatnot. 70% of the kids are within a 5-kilometre radius. 95% of the kids are within a 15-kilometre radius. This is a critical piece of infrastructure that is servicing Northern Beaches residents. And I understand, we're going to be losing 2 houses, but I think on balance, it's a very reasonable, proposal that's before you.
All right. Thank you for that. I wanted to raise this 24 months approval process. Now, let's suppose that an occupation certificate was approved in September of this year, 23. That would take you through to September of 25, which is still during the school year. How does that work from your point of view? Because it's always conceivable that the new building work on the existing site may be delayed for one reason or another, and the 24 months would then not be sufficient to accommodate what you want.
Yes, look, of course, in an ideal world, everyone wants everything to run on time, but I do understand that that is a possibility. And if that is the case, Stella Maris College has to lodge another application to council. The application has to go before council, and then they will then consider that, request for another 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. And then council will make a decision as to whether they think that that's valid and appropriate. And obviously at that time, they can make a decision to either agree to that extension or they can choose to refuse it, and the demountable will simply need to be removed. Look, it's a possibility, but there are checks and balances. And if it gets to that point, there's a check. And they've got it. Stella Maris is going to have to come before council, and council will then consider it. And if they're of a mind to not agree to it, then that's so be it. That's the outcome.
Okay. One more question. In the report, it talks about the removal of the demountables and being replaced by turf. Has any consideration been given to ensuring that long term there was landscaping along the northern and the western side of the two lots. And some car parking was built in order to take some of the pressure off the street system, or at least accommodate spaces for teachers or students.
So yes, that is correct. At the end of the 24-month period, the demountables will be removed and the site turfed. Council has requested additional conditions regarding, landscaping and what that looks like. Once the demountables have been removed, we support those conditions. As to your question of providing additional car parking, that is definitely an aim of the school, and it is something that they will consider in the future to provide additional spaces, because obviously traffic, parking, pickup, drop off are, that goes hand in hand with schools, and the school's aware of the burden it places on the local community regarding that. And when the time comes, obviously they're about to undertake a significant capital works program in building the new creative arts building at the southern end of the building. I don't know what the total cost is coming in at, but that is the immediate goal, and there is a long-term goal to potentially provide additional car parking. And I will just say that when that time comes, to provide any type of basement car parking, you need development application. You need consent to do that. So again, the school will be required to come before council if they were of a mind to provide, basement car parking on that site. And again, council at that time will consider whether that's appropriate or not.
Okay, and finally, I understand that there are 11 GLAs that need to be accommodated elsewhere, and that the proposed buildings will accommodate 8 GLAs. Now, how does that work in practice? Are the class sizes larger, or what?
It's a little bit of both. Finding some wiggle room and spare capacity on the creative arts building, and then also, additional numbers in the 8 GLAs. Obviously, they've looked at the numbers, the practicalities, and the bare minimum requirements the school needs to temporarily run while these works, and 8 GLAs is where they landed. But yeah, you're right. It's going to be, tight for the school while these works take place. But that's just, the nature of the beast when you're managing constrained sites like they are.
And how many students would then go on to be accommodated in the demountables?
Oh, if you need to ask anyone else, I can jump on and look at the figures that would have been provided in the acoustic report, because those capacities were assessed and considered to make sure that noise impacts to neighbours weren't going to be of a concern. And the acoustic report considered those numbers that are sort of proposed for those rooms, and it concluded that it's not going to be a nuisance to the sort of near receivers. So I can look up those exact figures for you.
No, don't bother. I think that answer is fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, David, could I just ask a quick
that's
question?
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Can I just one? I know my video's been disappearing and appearing again, and I also appear to be talking on a phone. That's because I'm getting all the audio from what you're all saying via the phone line, but I can see you via video via Teams. So it might look like I'm not here, but I've heard everything that's been said. So appearances aren't everything, as they say. Marjorie, you had another question.
Yes, I did. Sorry, I meant to ask it earlier. Quite a few of the objectors and neighbours around Crimea have talked about the non-compliance in terms of the floor space. Could you just talk about that and why, we, I guess, should be considering it?
Yeah,
given that it's a non-compliance.
Yes, and it is a non-compliance, and it just speaks to what I've reiterated a number of times that the school has a short-term, temporary, immediate need to house, you know, these 8 GLAs. And it has a specific requirement. You need to understand it's an educational use. So it doesn't fit the box of a residential, you know, development.
Mm-hmm.
The school explored a 2-story structure because that would, comply with the setbacks. And we looked at that. But then I don't know if that's a great outcome for the street to have a 2-story temporary demountable sort of, you know, protruding up. So yes, you would have your compliant setbacks, but then on balance, is that a good outcome, you know, from a streetscape perspective? And then you also need to consider if you provide a 2-story temporary demountable, you're required to install lift access. So to install a lift for a temporary building, and then given the streetscape impacts, it was decided that a 1-story, you know, low format building that, you know, behind your standard 1.8 fence with a bit of landscaping would sit much more neutrally, or I guess respectfully, in the streetscape compared to a compliant 2-story form. So obviously we did look at that, and on balance with all the competing interests, and obviously trying to temporarily house the kids while, you know, we do these works, that is where we landed. And then I acknowledge there is an FSR non-compliance, but again, it's a temporary non-compliance. This is a temporary structure. It's only going to be in place for 24 months and then it's gone. This isn't a permanent structure, and it's really just a stopgap to service the school. And again, it's an educational use. It's not a residential use. So the layout, the format, the requirements, the functionality of it are different to a residential dwelling. So trying to fit it into the residential sort of development controls, you know, it sort of, you need to, I guess, balance that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, David. That's fine.
Can I just ask? Thank you. The additional question that I have, over and above what's already been asked and the points that have been made, relates to the ongoing relationship of the school and the community, and also what mechanisms you're planning to put in place to make sure there's not a recurrence of what appears to have, or what the residents have mentioned happened last time there was construction on site. Judging by the volume of submissions and the content of the submissions, there's clearly, you know, a significant number of residents who are uneasy about the street. And I do have a lot of experience with what happens around schools during the day. With in the morning, you know, it's chaos with virtually all of them. But there appears to be, well, we're getting, I guess, feedback that some residents appear that there's a relationship issue, and also in terms of, you know, how you might have some sort of feedback process in place that's effective during the construction phase if the demountables do receive consent. Can you just walk us through that so the panel and also the residents sort of have got some reassurance about how the system may work, not only on a temporary basis, but over an ongoing basis, please?
Yeah, I understand that. Schools are always, I don't want to say flashpoints, but, you know, they can be. And obviously we acknowledge that there were issues when the works were undertaken previously. As I mentioned before, those contractors and team have not been engaged as part of this development. In terms of the processes that are going to be put in place to avoid those issues, because obviously we just don't want to repeat that, I might either hand over to the school or potentially the project managers for what mechanisms they have in place to, you know, for consultation, I guess, incident reporting, and then just, I guess, overall management while construction takes place. So I don't know if there's someone from my team that wants to jump in on that.
Yeah. Hi, Kaima. So I might just jump in there. So Tom Booth, Project Director for Mossley Copper. So absolutely, as you said there, we're going through a process to make sure we select a very reputable contractor to partner with the school on this project. We'll make sure that all the construction management plans are in place. Part of our job as well will be doing that constant monitoring throughout the works, and we'll work with the school to look at what we can put in place there for feedback and consultation with the neighbours, potentially newsletters, things like that we do on many other projects. So yeah, we'll definitely work with the school and do whatever we can to support that relationship with between the neighbours and the school, and also making sure that the contractor is responsible, making sure that the roads are kept clean, and any other typical disruption issues that you might associate with construction works. We'll be doing everything to make sure that they're managed in accordance with the DCP.
Okay, thank you. And the school generally on an ongoing basis, how does resident liaison operate at the moment, and are you looking at changing that sort of setup?
Yeah, I'll just address that. We have given all the neighbours in the letter that went around the contact details of our administration email address, and they can contact the front reception. We've had a number of emails recently from the neighbours, and we have attempted to respond to all of those. So we would be aiming to continue that process, that they could email the reception and forward that through to the reception will forward that through to the relevant person to respond to. I think there was actually an issue in the last couple of months where some of those emails were blocked by our firewall, and so some of those weren't responded to quickly, but we have attempted to respond to all of them in as quick as possible time.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other comments from the panel before we close off the public session?
No, none from me, David.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, okay, that's great. Thank you all very much. Thank you everyone for your participation so far. Thank you for the residents for your submissions and your presentation, and also for the applicant and your team for coming to the panel. That's the closure of this item. As I mentioned, the panel will be deliberating in camera about the item and determining the matter, and then that determination will be made public by council in the coming days. So I'll close off on item 4.1, and then as I may have mentioned earlier, item 4.2 has been withdrawn from the agenda. So we won't be dealing with that, and that is they're the only two items on the public session today. So I'd now like to close the public meeting component of the Northern Beaches Local Planning Panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Panel members, could you stay online after everyone else has logged off, please?